Welcome to this talk on the Layering Trust in Intimate Digital Health Technologies project. I'm Aira Lampinen from Stockholm University, and I run this project together with Madeleine Bailam from KTH. We have 4 key aims for the project. First of all, we are conducting a landmark study of the first algorithmic contraceptive on the market, and this empirical research is what I'm going to be primarily focusing on in the talk today. Beyond that, we are working on enhancing existing models of trust in algorithmic systems with a specific focus on the interpersonal elements of trust. We also work on interaction design, seeking to provide practical design knowledge for the improvement of digital intimate health technologies. And finally, we seek to initiate a conversation with society around how algorithms and AI systems can concretize existing biases within society. Natural Cycles is a Stockholm-based company that provides an algorithmic contraceptive option to more than 700,000 users worldwide. We consider it an algorithmic contraceptive since the system uses daily readings of a user's temperature to then, with the help of algorithms, to develop a model of the user's reproductive cycle. This allows the smartphone application to detect ovulation and thus predict periods of fertility. The system can then recommend the user the use of a barrier method of contraception to avoid an unwanted pregnancy. We are conducting a large-scale interview study with a focus on current Natural Cycles users. And so far, we have collected over 80 semi-structured individual interviews across 4 languages. And in the interviews, we focus on the participants' history with Natural Cycles, how they came to know about the system, why they chose to adopt it, what kind of experiences did they have of taking it on board, and so forth. They're the participants' daily routines, how they go about actually using the system currently, and how do they fit it into their everyday, changes in bodily awareness that have come about from using the system, and importantly, questions around shared use and shared access to Natural Cycles. So this is where we also get a view into how a system like Natural Cycles enters intimate relationships. So our research focus really is on the social context of use, in considering trust in the technology and participants' assessments of whether this is a trustworthy technology. It seems very obvious to us that when we think of a system like Natural Cycles, it is not just the main user that needs to be convinced. Rather, there are really important elements of interpersonal trust at play, most importantly, negotiations among intimate partners who are choosing and agreeing to rely on this mode of contraception. Furthermore, there are also organizational aspects to consider, such as encounters with healthcare professionals who may also have and share views of Natural Cycles as a mode of contraception and encourage or discourage individuals from relying on this system. And in the following, I'm going to share interview insights from our early analysis, focusing primarily on the different layers of trust at play. So when we think of Natural Cycles and trust, it is quite obvious that there are many things going on. First of all, there is of course the classic question of trusting or assessing the trustworthiness of a system like Natural Cycles. How does a user come to rely on a system like this that gets integrated into their daily life and into aspects of life that are fairly high stakes from the point of view of most of our participants? But from there are also really interesting issues around trusting oneself as a user and trusting one's bodily experiences, as well as questions around trust between intimate partners and how the partners come to trust Natural Cycles or consider it a trustworthy technology. And one thing to note here is that when we're talking about trust here, we are also talking about trust in the face of sometimes discouraging signals, such as many participants sharing with us stories of healthcare professionals or family members dismissing or questioning this method of contraception. And this, of course, puts an added challenge on the development of trust in a technology like this. So let's first consider trusting natural cycles. And there are several elements to this. First of all, trusting natural cycles as an algorithmic system. Many of our participants talk about how the algorithm comes to know them and learns to know their reproductive cycle, and how this then over time, when the predictions match up with their own experience, they come to trust that the system knows what it's doing and provides reliable predictions. There are also questions around trusting natural cycles as a company, that they are providing a product that one can rely on and that they're handling data in appropriate ways. Many participants talk about the importance of the scientific backing behind natural cycles and the roots of natural cycles in the scientific community, referring especially to the backgrounds of the founders of the company. And for some also, it's really important that this is a product that has gained FDA approval, which further makes them feel that this is a credible choice for contraception. And what's coming very clearly across in our interviews is that trust in the reliability of natural cycles builds over time as the system's predictions match up with the user's bodily experiences. So this is something that gets repeated in many interviews, that trust development here is a very gradual process that takes time. But very interestingly, it is definitely not just a matter of a user coming to assess a technological system as trustworthy, but there are also really important elements of trusting oneself at play. And first of all, many of our participants have talked about how it's important for them to be able to trust themselves to use natural cycles accurately and consistently, and how if they don't do this, they then don't consider that it would be the app that is to blame, but rather they place the responsibility squarely on themselves. So really shouldering a lot of responsibility while arguing that the system really is acting as it should, and it's really up to the user to make sure that use is accurate and consistent. Another element of trusting oneself has to do with trusting one's body and its signals. And this is a really interesting one, in that many participants talk about how having the app confirm what one senses in one's body can lead to a better understanding of one's body, and also to help taking personal bodily experiences seriously. So for many of our participants, starting to use natural cycles has been quite an eye-opener, in that they have learned a lot more about their reproductive cycles, the kinds of symptoms they experience at different points of the cycle. And this, for many, has been something that has helped them then to be kinder to themselves, and also to plan their schedules in ways that take into account how their energy levels may be shifting at different times of the month. Going forward, there are the really interesting questions of trust between partners. And what comes up in the interviews a lot is, of course, the question of getting intimate partners to trust natural cycles. So while the main user may have read up on the system and maybe has been using it for a while in some cases, there is also an element of the partners needing to develop trust with the system. So that's something that can take time, and that can also take interpersonal persuasion and conversations, and looks very different in different cases. So even within our research materials, we see a lot of diversity on these points. Furthermore, partners also aren't necessarily always trusting the participants' use of natural cycles. So coming to trust that one's partner will indeed measure the temperature consistently, and that this is going to be good enough to provide reliable predictions, is something that can be challenging. And in some cases, we've also had participants talking about how their partners have questioned their intentions in wanting to use natural cycles, wondering whether they truly are looking for this as a contraceptive option. Sometimes also what comes up in our interviews is that the use of natural cycles may have led to increased trust and closeness in relationships. And this is especially often the case when partners too have learned more about the participants' bodies and their bodily rhythms, and generally often also just about reproductive health, such as when in the month one might get pregnant. If we then consider a little bit more the issues around shared use and shared access, what we've seen in our research is that there are really diverse practices and experiences related to sharing. Some of our participants are very firm about natural cycles use being their personal choice and nobody else's business. For others, natural cycles use is much more of a collaborative action and something where they have active partner involvement. And finally, there are partners who really struggle with how they should handle sharing with their partners and how the responsibilities around this type of contraception should be handled. We have already identified further issues to explore beyond the current research. And firstly, there are adverse experiences that will be really important to look into, the kinds of scares and concerns that come up even for the kinds of participants we are focusing on here, so people who have mostly positive experiences with natural cycles. But also we think a key avenue for further research would be to expand the dataset targeting participants who have stopped using the system. And secondly, there are really important issues around taking and managing risk, both risk-taking with natural cycles and complementary forms of contraception, but also practices that introduce extra caution, such as adding a few days of margin when the prediction is about to turn from green to red. To conclude, our project studies technology use beyond the individual. We're interested in the use of digital intimate health technologies in a social context, and we are seeking to design for multiple layers of trust. So in addition to trusting the technology, those involved need to trust one another.